Hello everyone, and in this video we are going to discuss how to play the Grunfeld defense. And Grunfeld defense is an opening played from the black side, and it's one of the most effective and one of the most good opening to play against 1d4. Whenever your opponent replies with 1d4, many players in the beginner level, even in the intermediate level, always gets confused which opening they should select to play in the game. Today I'm going to discuss the Grunfeld defense, which is a very good opening to play against 1d4, and I think this opening might help you to improve your game, and you can even execute this opening in your game. So we are going to check out how to play the Grunfeld defense by looking at a game played between Anish Giri, world-class player, versus Ding Liren from China, very awesome player, Indian world number 2. The game is going to be awesome, and this game was actually played in 2020, 24th of April. So yeah, so it's going to be very interesting. So let's quickly jump into the game. So Anish Giri, playing with the white pieces, starts out the game with 1d4, and Ding Liren with the black pieces replies with knight to f6, c4, g6, knight c3, d5. This is the from here the Grunfeld defense starts. Like if you try to play bishop g7, your opponent plays e4 d6, and you have the King's Indian defense. King's Indian defense is one of the opening that can be played in the higher level, but I would only recommend you to play this opening if you are completely prepared, or else your opponent can simply burst you by playing f3, and there is the very dangerous plan of playing bishop e3 queen d2, long castle g4 h4 h5. This could be very dangerous for black. That is the reason d5 is a very positional opening, and it has a large amount of theory. But I think I'm going basically in this video we are going to discuss all the key ideas which can occur in the game. So we have seen to d5, which is the most normal way to play. Knight into d5, e4, knight into, and b into c3. So what is happening in this position is white usually have complete domination in the center. In the exchange, what black have in this position, black puts the bishop to g7, which happened in the game, and white responds with bishop to c4. Usually a bishop c4 is the most common move in this position. So bishop c4. So what happens in this position is white try to keep the center, and what is the basic idea for black here is black tries to play c5 and try to put pressure on the pawn on d4. And so basically we have already created a weakness on the d4 pawn. We definitely know that white is having a pure control in the center, but at the same time the center pawns can be a very big weakness for white. So after bishop c4, black plays c5. You can't capture the pawn, or you can't even push the pawn because of bishop into pawn, or you simply lose a rook. That is the reason white puts the knight to e2. In this position, there are two common moves to continue the game. One can be knight e2, which happened in the game, and the second move is knight to f3. Knight to e2 is much better than knight f3. I personally feel is the reason is after knight f3, you still protect this pawn, but the main difference in this position is black usually puts the bishop on g4, hitting this knight, and basically you lose a defender to protect the pawn on d4. But in this scenario, where the knight is on e2, in this position, if black tries to put the bishop on g4, now you can play f3 and you can simply hit the bishop, so nothing is happening. That is the reason knight e2 is much better than knight f3. So all the players looking out for how to play against the Grunfeld, I think this can be a very good video for them as well. So after knight e2, black played knight c6, putting more pressure on the pawn on d4. Bishop e3, white is simply developing the pieces, and black is doing the same. Short castle by white, b6. So generally when white puts the knight to e2, black need to develop the bishop from c8 to somewhere. Like he can't develop the bishop to g4 because of f3. So where will the bishop go? That is the reason black played b6 in this position, and after b6, black usually puts the bishop to b7, puts the pawn to e6, and it's a complete cement position, and there are no real weakness in the position, and it's completely fine position. So after b6, we have rook to c1 in the game. Being the c5 can also be a possible move, and in this position, like there are many moves to continue the game. But I think the best way to continue the game is to play queen to c7. After queen c7, you can also consider it as gambit type. Although the best move is to play bishop to f4 or even knight to g4 can be a good move. But if your opponent tries to capture this pawn after a to b6, although black is the pawn down, but just look at this weakness. c3 is a weakness, a2 is a weakness. The queen is putting pressure on bishop on c4, which is a serious pressure. There could be a good square for already on the bishop on a6. I think black is very comfortable in this position after being a pawn down. Like after here, if like for example, if white tries to continue the game by playing something like queen to b3, attacking this pawn over here, we simply have knight to a5, and you lose the piece. If for example, if let's take rook b1 trying to hit like this, we have knight to e5, good move, hitting the bishop, bishop to d5, rook b8, and it's a pretty fine position. The a6 square is empty for the bishop, and it's a good position for black. That is the reason. That is one of the main reasons why it doesn't go for capturing the pawn and try to keep the center. So after rook c1, black simply developed the bishop to b7, bishop to b5, hitting the knight, and here we simply have pawn trade in the center. And in this position, if I need to evaluate this position, white looks slightly better in this position. You have to admit it. Quite simple. White is having a nice center. But at the same time, you can just look at that. Black actually doesn't have any strong weakness, so that white can get a real serious advantage. Like I would say, black pieces are all well developed. After pawn takes, we have rook c8 in the game, which makes every piece of black gets developed. And yeah, definitely white is having a strong center, but at the same time, the center pawn can be considered as a big weakness, because if you lose the protection from these pawns, everything is falling apart for white. So after rook c8, we have queen to d2 by white. Like for example, if black tries to push this pawn, which is also a fine move, this will simply give black a square on e5. So it's a good move for black. So white actually need to play very carefully to continue the position. So after rook to c8, white continued by playing queen to d2. White wants to put the rook to d1 and complete his development. Black plays e6, stopping this d5 idea at some point, and yeah, black is completely fine. Black actually wants to put the queen on e7 followed by rook d8, and yeah, the same idea of completing the development. So after e6, we have rook d1, knight a5, asking for a rook trade. We have a rook trade, bishop to g5, taking control of the dark squares, queen to c7. In this position, if you try to capture this pawn, like thinking it's a free pawn, now white can continue by playing bishop to e7, and basically you lose the rook because everything is covered. That is the reason you can't go for capturing this pawn. So queen to c7, covering the e7 square for the bishop. Now g5, takes, queen to c5, hitting this bishop. You need to protect this bishop. Queen to d6. Now queen is acting as the blockader for the pawn on d5. Now there is only single target for white in this position. The d5 pawn is a weakness. Although at the same time it's a pass pawn, but at the same time it's a weakness. We can consider it as a weakness. Once you grab the pawn on d5, black is simply better because black is simply a pawn up. So you can already sense that Grunfeld is a very, very positional opening, very theoretical opening. And yeah, bishop to f4. Hitting this queen, bishop to e5, not moving the queen because it would give white a serious advantage. Bishop e5, trading the bishops, trying to push the pawn, rook g8, d7, knight to c6. If you take pawn, bishop takes, and you lose this d7 pawn on the next move. So you can't take knight to c3, and this was a mistake. You can't call it a mistake. The reason knight c3 was a mistake because now came a very strong move in this position. Can you find it? So feel free to pause the video and try to find the best move for black in this position, which happened in the game and played by Dingleren. Brilliant move, I would say. So that's all of those who have came up with this excellent move, a6, prophylactic move, positional move, a6. So what happens in this position? If you take this, first of all, if you take this knight, bishop takes and you lose this pawn on the next move. So Ding decides to capture this pawn, and after takes, he lost a knight. After losing a knight, definitely Anish would have saw this, and he played queen to c8. What he's thinking is, first of all, rook can't capture the queen because white will simply make a new queen and would be an exchange up simply. Second here is the queen can't lose this c file because the knight is hanging on c6. So we have queen c2 by Ding, rook to e1, and now rook e8 is a deadly move. Queen e2, rook e8, check, king g7, and just look at this position. Such a brilliant position. White is having 2 pieces on the 8th rank already, but the reason is white can't really go for capturing this rook because it's a back rank mate. Basically, white needs to first get out of this back rank issue by playing h3, and after check, black simply captures the pawn on d7 and it's over. Black is a pawn up, and black is not only a pawn up, but he's a piece up simply, and it's completely winning. So in the end, we can say that a6 was the perfect strike to finish off the game by Ding. And after a6, the position is already good for black. Like for example, if you don't capture this pawn and you go back with the bishop, b5, bishop goes, knight to b8, and you still lose this pawn. So you can already sense it. The reason Anish resigned because he lost piece. But the main reason of me showing you this, obviously we're discussing this game, is playing the Grunfeld is a very theoretical knowledge, is very theoretically opening. It contains a large amount of theory, but the basic idea in this position is you put the pawn to c5, put the bishop on g7, put pressure on the pawn on d4, and whenever your opponent tries to put the knight on e2, you develop your bishop by playing b6, bishop b7. If your opponent tries to put the knight on f3, then you can develop your bishop by playing bishop g4, hitting this knight over like this. And many times, actually, what's happening in the game, I suppose, like after b6, there are many theories where black actually puts the queen to a5. Like before here, I suppose, like perhaps, I don't know, perhaps in this position where black queen a5 can be a very useful move for black. So there are basically lots of theories, but I think this can be a very good example for you to learn how to play the Grunfeld defense, because it basically covered a complete detailed idea. You develop the bishop by playing bishop b6, bishop b7. If your opponent put the knight to e2, if your opponent put the knight on f3, develop the bishop by playing bishop to g4. Or else the idea is completely same. You basically have the same structure. It doesn't matter which move order white go for. And despite being a good pawn structure, you can simply create pressure. Like e6, you just need to come up with this structure and you would never land in a bad position, because there are no real weaknesses for black. Like everything protects each other. There are no real weakness. So that is the reason Anish Giri lost the game. His weakness was the d5 pawn, his own central pawn, which looked stronger in the start, but in the end, as we landed in the end game, it simply became a weakness, and black converted it well by a very tactical blow, being essentially a piece up, and it's over. It's basically over after rook to d7 on the move number 33. Anish Giri decides to resign, and we have the champion Ding Liren. So we have this interesting analysis of the game of Grunfeld defense, and I hope that you must have liked this analysis, and this might have gave you some idea how to play the Grunfeld defense. I think you can now, after watching this video, you can go and play some games online, like on League Chess, on chess.com, try to practice this particular opening, Grunfeld defense. It's a very good opening. And yeah, that is the reason top grandmasters like Ding Liren, even Magnus Carlsen plays it. So yeah, so this was all for today. I'm going to come up with these analysis like this, coming up with this interesting videos about interesting strong openings. So if you like the video, then make sure to like the video. If you're new to my channel, then make sure to subscribe to the channel, and make sure to share this video with everyone, so those who are suffering to get an answer how to play against 1d4, they can go on and play the Grunfeld defense. So I'm going to see you soon. So till then, stay tuned and keep watching One Shot Chess.